Welcome to Cider Chat. In this episode, we're going to be finding how there's a bit of crossover between mead, wine, and cider. But in the end, they are all their own unique drinks. And you're going to be hearing from a producer who makes them all. Hello, my name is Ria Wincaller, and I am the producer and cider MC of this weekly podcast, where we speak with makers, cider enthusiasts, and folks within the cider trade from around the world. Hip, hip, hooray! I'm super stoked if you are a new listener to Cider Chat that you are taking the time to check in on this podcast and find out what it's all about. Let me give you a heads up here. We always start with a little bit of news out and about in Ciderville, a little bit of chit-chat, kind of updating, sometimes emails, sometimes talking about new patrons to Cider Chat. All good stuff before we go into the featured conversation. So you do have the opportunity to scroll ahead. Maybe on your little podcast app, there's something that says like 15 seconds ahead or 30. You could always do that. But I'll tell you, there's always so much good news. And if you like being in that plane of existence of good news, then stick around. Definitely stick around. And make sure to hit that subscribe or follow button on your little podcast app. And for all the folks who are regular listeners of this podcast, always good to talk with you. It makes me smile just thinking about all the folks that I know who are out there just hanging out with me right now. Do know I am back at my home port of Ciderville, my own special spot in New England. And I had just been on the West Coast with family. And while there, I recorded a new cider song. Yes, I'm so stoked, but I'm holding it under wraps right now because, we got to do a couple stuff or things with it. I don't know what to call it, but, there's a little bit of building up to it, and I am planning on releasing it for episode 300. And if I'm correct, I do think that this is episode 288. I should check that. You kind of lose count when you're like way up there. It's kind of kooky, but it's true. Anyways, I'm building up to episode 300 when we release this new cider song, and I'm super stoked. I might be like letting out little tidbits. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't think I should yet. But it was really fun to sing, and for all of you who like singing along, there's lots of little riffs there where you will be able to jam along with us. And of course, I'm singing with my cousin Jay again, who's on the guitar, and totally different than the other song, We Like Cider. So stay tuned for that. That was really like one of my goals. I had a couple of goals when I was on the West Coast, which was to get into the ocean. I was able to do that. Be with my mom. I was able to do that. That was like really why I was going. So that was a key goal. And the other one was to record another song with my cousin. And dang it, we did it. So I'm just holding that under wraps right now, but it's fun. It's really fun. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. And I'm going to take a little pause here. And I got a little bit of tidbit, some news out and about in Ciderville, so we'll be right back with that. This past weekend was just picture perfect outside. So, of course, I took a little ride out to West County Cider. And West County, if you don't know, was the first commercially licensed cidery in the U.S. at that point. Up to 1984, there was this little window between 79 and 1984. Let's say back in 79, you had Martinelli's. They gave up their cider making license. It was a winery license, actually. But, that company was founded on making cider way back in 1865. I have a great conversation with one of the grandsons and CEO, John Martinelli. I'll put a link in the show notes to that chat with John. That's based out in California. But they weren't making cider, really. And so there was this gap of time, post-prohibition, not a lot of interest in cider, and the Maloneys really kicked off the craze. So you could really call them like the father and mother of modern cider today, and that's Terry and Judith Maloney. So while there, I got to see Judith, who is not always there, but when she is, it's like celebrity time. Oh my goodness, it's so exciting. So took a couple photos with her, and also they were selling cheese that was set up in a little package with charcuterie and a really nice complement of cheeses to go with their cider. And that was built in with a local cheese shop called Provisions, which is outside of Well, it's right in Northampton, Massachusetts, right down the road. So I loved it. I had to get myself this little cheese platter. It was just so beautifully prepared, supporting local businesses, and definitely knowing that food and cider elevates the experience 100-fold. It's just like you have a good cider, you want to make it even better, have some food. And definitely have some food if the cidery is promoting some local product to match with their cider. If you're not doing that, well, you're kind of missing out on a great opportunity. One, to kind of build up the local sourcing of different establishments, right, that we work with. So I just loved it. I loved it so much. I took some video, a couple photos, and I'm going to be putting that up at the Cider Chat TikTok channel. So check that out at Cider Chat. It should be live by the time this podcast goes live on Wednesday, September 15th. So I loved it, and I'm hoping that you're doing that. Sometimes we want to just keep in our own confines, but I'm sure that there is a cheese shop near you, and there's just nothing better. In fact, our guest this week, Dan Schreffler of Spacetime Mead Cider Works, he does exactly that. He also has local cheeses for sale to go at his storefront. And I tasted some cheese while I was there with Dan, and he paired it perfectly. The guy has a great palate. So people are doing it, and if you aren't, well, you should. And let's say you're not a commercial maker, you don't have a business. Definitely always pack a little cheese in your rucksack or whatever, your cooler. Bring it along, especially on these beautiful autumn days where you're probably drinking cider. And if you're in the southern hemisphere, with like our friends down in Australia or New Zealand or down in Latin America, well, you could do it too. I mean, let's face it, food and cider, it always goes quite well year round. That's my little tip for today. Walking through the orchards. Up next, we're going to go to our featured conversation with Dan Schreffler of Spacetime Mead Cider Works. Let's do this.
I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm honored. This is really a pleasure for me. I've been listening to the show for a while, and actually I was like, oh my gosh, you're coming now. I feel like I'm not ready yet. I haven't built up the reputation or the resume yet to fully enjoy this. So.
It's all about the enthusiasm, right? And isn't it true, like with a craft like this, that we're all kind of practicing? And is there a master? Even the master wants to master something else. So
yeah. We're always learning.
Yeah, and this was a good excuse for me to come in an area that I have grown so fond of, Pennsylvania, and coming down the highway on 84, taking that turn and just like, it kind of like drops my body. So I'm really stoked to be here.
Awesome.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about Dunmore?
It started as a mining town, gravity railroads. It's a big iron and coal region. People know Scranton right now primarily from The Office or Joe Biden's hometown at one point.
Oh, right.
So we have some history here. I grew up, I guess, about 40 minutes down in another county, a little town called West Hazelton. And I went to school up here in Dunmore. There's a Penn State campus here.
Right.
And really liked the area and lived outside the area, a couple small little rural communities. But ultimately, when we were looking to live in what I consider a nice, walkable, safe community, we settled on Dunmore. It's just, there's people that have been here forever, but very welcome to folk from outside. A lot of history and just wonderful. It's a wonderful area, and particularly I love Northeast Pennsylvania. We're striking distance from New York, Boston, Philly, Pittsburgh, and not have any of those, I would say, bigger city issues or something like the crowding, the traffic. Yeah. People come from outside the area to escape to our hills, as it were, and I'm like, no, I'm living here. I love it. I love it. Yeah. Well, and is this like the downtown, like, main drag? I'm at the end of it, actually. Okay. When you would have came in, there's what we call the corners, Dunmore Corners, where Dunmore actually started in like 1862 or something. Long history here. But that's really that strip up there. So we're right at the almost at the tail end of it. So we get
small town.
It's definitely small town.
Yeah,
Walkable.
Yeah.
I walk to work. It's 6 blocks to my house, and I love it.
And you have an airport, right? Pretty close by.
Yeah. Allen, or the ABE, Avoca Airport, Wilkes-Barre Scranton Airport, the AVP according to the letters
AVP. AVP. I wonder what that's.
Avoca.
Avoca.
Avoca is the community that the actual airport is situated in.
Neat.
Yeah.
Not like O'Hara Airport, which is like Orchard, ORD. It originally stands for Orchard.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Isn't that cool?
Oh, I see. I never really
now
thought.
I always ask.
That's
what's
clever. Yeah, no, that would AVP would be Avoca. I'm not where the P came from, but Avoca, Pennsylvania, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you went to Penn State and you started making mead when?
Oh, yeah, that was 13 years ago. So I grew up, I had a lot of bad examples in my family with alcohol. So I was one, I didn't drink in college. I didn't drink in, high school or any of that kind of underage stuff. I had a lot of bad examples. And when I was drinking, it would be usually a glass of wine somewhere. So my uncle would always bust me, oh, you're the stem man, because I wouldn't drink a lot, but it would be wine.
Sure.
Never really into beer until I went to Ireland. And discovered that
makes sense.
Fresh beer, particularly when it's your first meal landing because all the places have closed, and so 6 pints of Guinness, this is a good product. And then started getting into craft beer, which we couldn't do here. I mean, not do here, but you couldn't find it readily in Northeast Pennsylvania. So I had worked for MetLife Insurance Company for years, had a chance to travel, and got a chance to taste some really, really good craft beer.
Yeah.
So friends of mine started to make it.
Okay.
Started making craft beer, and then we're all geeks, so of course we have to make mead. And then, of course, you're making mead, and then the cider mill's up the road. You start making ciders, and really enjoyed both those products. Primarily spent most of my focus on mead just because it was something you couldn't readily get in the stores. But cider is definitely because our access to fresh press locally is pretty decent. Now, culinary apples, but we made some decent ciders along the way, and so that was the start of that. Never thought I would make a business out of it, though. That was not.
Yeah, what inspired that? People like saying, "Oh my God, Dan, it's so good."
Yeah, living a dream. What inspired that? And I'm actually living the result of a lot of hard work and savings and planning and just trying to figure out. So a lot of folk have heard, not your listeners have heard the story, but people that ask me what the background has heard the story. So in 2010, I was diagnosed and treated for cancer. Everything's fine. It's all good. I count my blessings. I face all the deities and thank them all, as well as medical science for doing what they do. Two side effects out of cancer. One is impatience, and the second one is perspective. And so out of that, you think about what is Dan 2.0 going to be? What's he going to look like?
Yeah.
And I loved working where I worked. MetLife, fantastic company, made a lot of money. But it was a lot of hours of work, 60-hour work weeks, corporate America. I'm middle management. It's IT, so it's important. There's a lot of pressure, and actually there's a third side effect of cancer, which would be chemo brain. There's a cognitive impact of that. So I could not do the same job that I was doing in the past as well. So it was struggle, frustration. It's like, why am I doing this? You have a chance to really do anything, and so began a 8-year planning cycle of saying, how do we get that freedom, and what is it we want to do? And winery, I was like, that wasn't until about a couple years afterwards. I'm like, we could pull this off, and there's something that we can do this. So I left my job in 2017, early retirement, and did a cross-country tour. My wife and I, we did 4 weeks together. She had to go back to work, and I said, honey, can I stay on the road a couple more weeks?
In 2017.
In 2017.
Good time to go.
And did another 5 weeks by myself.
Wow.
Wineries, breweries, meaderies, cideries, ballparks, national parks. Just hitting a whole bunch of stuff and trying to get a feel. And everyone I talked to, I liked what they were doing. I liked The majority, I say, I liked the happiness in their eyes. There was a few that you could tell that it was a job and maybe they overcommitted or something along that. But the majority, and I'm like, and I was tasting their meads, and I'm like, I could do this. I could do this. So my wife and I talked about it, and we were, financially able to do it. And we found this little place in Dunmore, just down the street, and we said, all right, let's see what we can do to pull off. And I'm also lucky. Down the road from us is our homebrew store, Simply Homebrew. He started a winery in 2017. So I got to apprentice with him. So I helped make his first mead. He got free labor. I got a wealth of education on a commercial system. And again, it was like, okay, this is no longer conceptual stuff. I have my hands on it. He's allowing me to see what's really involved and make sure, is it something you want to do? Do you want to ruin a good hobby, Dan? Is often.
Right. Well, that's a good question to ask.
Yeah.
Because you could take the fun out of it, like you said.
Yeah. Because really, when you talk about cider or winemaking, it's 20% of your time is the actual production. And everything else is running the business, the spreadsheets, the marketing, the sales, all that kind of thing. So when folk ask, are all excited about, I want to do this, I'm like, okay, do you have a 401k? What about vacation time, medical, all this other stuff? It's like, how's that being paid? Because I guarantee your startup winery is not going to pull that off.
Yeah,
not at all.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And hopefully you'll do it in 10 years.
Yeah. Or your spouse is providing that means and that, but you've got to be thinking about those things. Because if you try to do it part-time, you become one of those miserable wine or beer makers, and ultimately that's going to translate into your product.
Spoken like a MetLife rep.
Yeah. By the way, are you insured properly to make sure that your winery goes to a proper place?
But I mean, that's valuable input, that you have that kind of business savvy in that way, because we do sometimes go running head into, something, and don't take all the different add-ons. So
I was lucky to have that experience.
No doubt.
Because if you don't, it depends. If you don't have kids and a family to worry about, you could roll those dice all day. But if you have a family, or you have a couple of young kids, and
everything's adding up.
Winery may not be the best way to pull that
long
off.
hours and then a lot of traveling and pouring at tastings and all that. So
Yeah.
I see on your Instagram feed you're always like out there, peddling your product, and that takes time on a weekend.
Yeah. So if your kid, if your wife is working during the week and you're away on the weekends, all right, where's that quality time? Where's that family time going to happen?
Well, it sounds like you have that balance. You got it going. So.
Yeah, we've been able to figure it out. In 2020 actually reset us. When life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. When life gives you a virus, you make a vaccine, as it were.
Right.
We took a look at so we're only 3 years old. We're toddlers in this business. Definitely toddlers in this business. But we took a look at what we were doing our first year, and we were doing gangbusters. We did every event. We did every wine festival. We were everywhere. We looked at pushing out potentially some wholesaling to a point, building the brand, getting the name, all that. And so that was a 60-hour work week. I'm like, wait, I'm supposedly semi-retired, quote unquote.
All right.
And I'm working and enjoying every second. Don't get me wrong.
It's a different kind of work.
Enjoying every second, but it's still working. And it's like, all right, my wife and I, she was teaching full time, and I'm like, okay, we're not connecting any more than we did. The house projects aren't getting done. We had a whole list of, great, Dan retired or left work early.
List.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so last year we looked at how much money we made with the downtime and not the events, and our revenue was definitely down, but our work effort was also down. So it's like, okay, how do we approach this? So we're cherry picking the events we want to be at. We're also cherry picking the wholesale outlets where we want to be. We don't want to just make money for other folk to make money. We want to do primarily direct to consumer, which was always our model, but this reinforced it.
Yeah.
We don't want to be servicing 20 different accounts. We're going to service 5, and they're going to be geographically unique, so it draws to them that the product is exclusive at their brewery in this area kind of thing.
So you're self-distributing?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, yep.
Which is taking out that middle person. And
Yep.
that helps a lot too.
And we're small. We're not producing a lot either. I mean, we're talking about 700 gallons a year. We're tiny. We're nano. We're smaller than nano.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, that does allow you to do those like small batch specialty items, and that's maybe the other part of it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we don't have to commit to. I'll show you the tanks later, but we're talking about 200 liter, 52 gallon tanks in the back, and we have one big one as a 75 gallon tank. So we're talking tiny, not a lot of
And are
cases.
those being shared with the mead, or how are you doing that?
Yes. So we have in the back is 10 tanks. And
Okay.
so we'll have, it depends on, what opens up and whatever fruit's available. We try to time the ciders all during the pressings and get those in, and then the mead, and then we'll time grapes too. We get primarily juice is what we're getting, but we'll time that. I'm a Chilean Malbec fan, so as soon as that's I have a tank ready always in springtime for the Chilean juice coming in.
Do you also sell the wine here then?
Yeah. We ferment. We'll ferment anything we're allowed to. So I have a maple wine. We ferment make a maple syrup wine. We do grape wines, mostly from the neighborhood. For the neighborhood, Meadery in Dunmore. What the hell's honey wine? What's mead?
I know.
Is that like a beer?
Well, maybe you say for Vikings, everybody be like, yeah.
Yeah, you do the whole Poets and Kings, Beowulf, Lord of the Rings.
It has a romanticism that's like none other.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And then with the Game of Thrones, and they're drinking mead on it, so we played off that. We have Dungeons and Dragons. Our niche is pretty cool. Dungeons and Dragons players. So we have folk that are playing the role-playing games come in, they're buying it. We have what I call neo-pagans or heathens, practicing heathens that are coming in, wearing their Thor's hammers and all that kind of stuff. We provide to that. Literary folk, historians, all that crowd is coming and buying the mead. The neighborhood just wants a bottle of wine for their dinner. So what do you have? That's a red match. What do you have for a white match? Right. So
perfect.
We'll work on convincing them that cider is that white wine replacement, or mead, and we do make a red and a white.
Wow, you're hitting on all 4 cylinders, really. That's interesting. So, are you also a beekeeper?
No, that's a full-time job. That's 1,000 pets you have to care for, and this is a full-time job.
Is that for owning a meadery? I mean, how much honey are you going through?
Yeah, so we go through. So each batch that I make goes 120 pounds of honey.
That's a lot of honey.
Yeah. So
it is a lot of work.
We're going through a ton of honey.
Wow.
Yeah, easily a ton.
Wow.
Yeah. So one is I could never do it to scale. I live in Dunmore. Our yard is a 40 by 60 yard. We grow fruit that we do a small batch, and my wife is allergic to bees, so another good reason too. Although I threaten it, no, I'm gonna no, but I would love to, just because I'm a collector of skills. But that's living entities, and I don't want to mess that up. And
folks out there in Ciderville, I want to just say right behind Dan right now is this cute little bee stand-up. What do you call that?
It's almost like a selfie. Selfie
which I'm
thing.
definitely going to get my photo taken of afterwards and share with everybody. But it's cute as a button, and you were in this room that's probably I'm gonna do a guesstimate here. I'm gonna say about 14 feet this way or so, and then going back probably about 18 or something like that.
No, you're pretty good. It's almost a 14 by 14 tasting room area.
Tasting room area.
Yeah.
And we're sitting at a table in the center that is high up, so we're kind of like on bar stools. And then at our knees is a holding 4 casks. There's 2 barrels here. They look like, I don't know, I'm going to say like 15, 20.
15, you got it. 15, you're doing good. That's why I'm letting you go. You're doing well.
I'm not always good at that, but so you got these barrels set up here. You sell barrels here, and then in the front window is some carboys, and so you're selling Or
extra stuff. I'm selling.
Yeah.
The Dunmore is a good Italian winemaking community. A lot of those folk are getting older, and the glass carboys are not their friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have people that say, "Hey, I'll sell you. We'll just buy it to help them out. We put it here and sell it away." We don't sell winemaking equipment, but we sell excess stuff that we have lying around.
Got it. You're not competing with the store down the road.
No, and again, that's something else that if you decide that you want to be a wine maker supply, you got to make sure you have what people expect to come in, which is that's another business.
That is another business.
It's another business.
You're so right.
Yeah.
So, and there's also this whole theme of the space-time continuum. Behind is a cardboard astronaut.
Yeah.
With an American flag, and there's an astronaut blow up in the back. And so let's go to the branding of Space-Time.
People always ask, where did you come up with the name? Because generally, so Spacetime Mead Cider Works in Dunmore. What's the connection with space? Well, we do actually. Turns out we do have a connection with space, but that wasn't the reason. So when we were talking about branding, you could be Schreffler's winery.
Yeah,
it's boring. Or surname winery,
and
surname
it's hard to trademark surnames now. Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing. And what does Schreffler even mean to anyone?
Right.
We wanted to have something that, and I like the craft beer scene. They're exciting. There's a lot of play. You have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So that was the concept we wanted to do. But then, all right. So what's the name? Dunmore was the right place. This was the right time in my life. So you have that. Mead's the oldest alcoholic beverage, supposedly, but people don't know what it is. So I was like a time traveler reintroducing this thing. So you have that. I'm a geek. So it allows us to have all those geek references: Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, Firefly, and then real science, real astronomy references. And then we thought about really what is that we're providing. Well, all right, we're selling wine. Okay, yeah, there's 1,000 wineries. When people come in for a bottle of wine, it's usually for a particular moment. I'm going to propose to that significant other.
Right,
I'm going to get together with my buddies, or we're family. So it's always about a moment in time and a place where you're going to enjoy that. And so it just demanded to be called that.
That's perfect.
One of my workers, that science guy, real bright guy, pretty much said you had to call it that because everywhere in the multiverse it's already been named that, except for one place, and they called it Sam's, and probably Sam's is a failure. So Space-Time is cool. Yeah. So that just played off. We have Paul Richards, a shuttle astronaut too, that is from Dunmore. He was on.
Is that his photo up on the wall there?
He came in and visited us, and I did the whole fanboy thing. He was on the early shuttle mission that built out the International Space Station.
Very cool.
STS-102, I believe.
You don't see that every day meeting an astronaut.
No, my God, and that was just
that's elite. That's elite.
It was meant to be.
Yeah,
and but I just have so much fun with the branding now. It's easy. Stuff pops up.
It does. Yeah, and it's memorable. I mean, you really notice it, and that's why I really recommend all the time on Cider Chat to follow your feed because it's so playful, and that personality. And now getting to meet you in person, I could see that even more. It's just kind of bubbling over into that.
People would love to have my worst day. I have a wonderful, blessed wife and family. And this, so yeah, if I ever complain, take me out and beat me because I have no right to complain about anything.
Well, that's honorable words there, no doubt.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of your products.
Yeah. Our focus has been primarily mead right now. So we make stuff that is, and people think of mead right away as sweet. In fact, I would argue that people think of cider as sweet too, simply because of the mass-produced stuff.
Sure.
We make stuff that is fairly bone dry, white wine replacement, all the way to candy in a glass. So we have a broad spectrum. We probably have about 40 different offerings right now. Again, we can do that because we do small batches.
But let's talk about how mead is made how it's fermented.
Oh, yeah, because people may not know what it is.
Not necessarily,
Yeah, so we're a licensed winery, so everything we make is going to be the same process. Mm-hmm. It depends what ingredient we're going to use. People in the United States think of, when we say wine, they think of grape wine automatically. That's not true in every culture, in every region. If you go to Africa, you say their word for wine is tej, and tej actually for them is assumed to be honey wine, as opposed to a grape wine. But in the United States, we think grapes. So mead is honey wine. So we take honey and dilute it either with water, or we'll dilute it with fruit juices, and then treat it just like a wine. So we'll ferment it, do a primary fermentation. We generally use wine yeast, but we may play and use beer yeast or natural yeast. We will then rack it off and then start, clarifying it and stabilizing it and filtering if the product. We want to do that with the product.
Right. What's the turnaround time for mead?
Right now, our average is about 8 months.
8 months.
Okay.
Okay.
8 months for, and then there's some things we want to age it further. So
I always thought like mead took a very long time. That's probably why I never really, it's the one thing that I've never really worked with, making an actual mead.
Yeah, and it used to take years simply because we didn't know how to make it right. And then science and people experimenting. Diluted honey is a yeast nutrient desert. You're putting all your workers into this thing. You're not feeding them properly. They're going to take forever to get the job done. They're probably going to smell up the place. They're going to mess, and so that's why traditional mead would take forever to make, simply because you had to leave all those fusel alcohols and those off flavors and stuff pretty much age out. There's a technique now called staggered nutrient additions now. Just give the yeast some vitamins, feed them properly. They do their work.
Staggering it.
Yeah, there's debate now.
Okay, whether you need to.
The gold standard, I would say, right now is staggered nutrient addition. So if anyone Googles that, they'll be able to see how to do it.
Yeah.
The American Homebrewers Association has been really good at promoting that. American Mead Makers Association, too, are helping promote that along the way. But just adding some nutrients allows the yeast to do their job in a healthy environment, that they can make something quicker than you did in the past.
Well, mead is pretty high in alcohol. Or what is the baseline? Am I wrong?
Yeah. So again, so there's two stereotypes for mead. One is they got it at the Renaissance Fair, and it was cloying. It was one dimensional.
Right.
It was almost like a soda. Or their buddy made it in college because they wanted the highest alcohol nightmare they could make, and
a hangover.
It was a hangover in a glass. It smelled and probably tasted like jet fuel, and you could probably clean your paintbrushes in it.
Right.
And that's the two stereotypes I fight all the time. Mead could be low alcohol. It could be 3%.
3%.
It could be up to.
Wow.
Well, we only push it as high as 17 so far, but you could push it. I forget who's. I'm sure there's one out there that's like 24. Legally, our winery can make up to about, I think, 24%. But we control that by how much honey we put into it. Unlike apples and grapes and whatever's in those grapes or whatever's in those fruit, that's the sugar.
Right.
Unless you're going to throw cane sugar at it or something like that.
Yeah.
But we control the honey, so it could be 1 gallon or 1 pound per gallon, or it could be 8 pounds per gallon, depending.
How do you measure that? Because with cider, you're able to, measure the juice.
Mm-hmm.
So with honey, are you doing the same thing?
Ultimately.
And do different honey? How do I explain? It's like jars. If I had 2 jars here from 2 different locations, they're going to have a different
potential sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah. They can, but
it's not specific gravity that you're doing. You are.
We are measuring that. You're measuring bricks or specific gravity. But that jar of honey, we're assuming that a pound of honey has roughly 32 gravity points per pound. Just as a reference, 30 to 35, roughly we figure there. And then as we're diluting it, we'll start measuring that bricks level, either with a hydrometer or a refractometer, and then dial in where we want to be our starting gravity. And depending upon what our starting amount of sugar is and the yeast we're going to use, we can control residual sweetness, and we can control how much alcohol. Although at the end of the day, we don't control anything. The yeast tells us what they're going to do with it.
So, because I can't imagine you put like a hydrometer into honey, and it's just going to be like this.
Oh yeah, no.
So you're diluting it.
You have to dilute it. Yeah.
So is there anything that you're looking for because you're adding water around the pH of the water that you want to add to mead? Is that really specific and
Good question. No, good question. So I'm lucky. Our water company around here provides fairly baseline water. It's really good, like brewing water. If you're making beer, if you're making like a pilsner, there's like really not a lot in it.
Pennsylvania's a great brew state.
Oh my
sure.
gosh, yeah, I forget what
Crazy
number we
good.
are, but it's fantastic.
Up there, yeah.
And well, Big Apple State too, number
That's
4, I
that's
believe.
true.
I think
That's
in
true.
growing.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll measure pH and make adjustments, and you could taste like any product. You taste it. Is it missing that complexity or balance that it requires? And then we'll do some acid additions. The honey and water fermenting generally they're around. Sometimes as low as 3.8 will come into, and other times it might be 4.2 or something along that line. As it ferments, it will get a little more acidic. But we'll taste and then we'll do some acid adjustments.
And are you looking for a particular kind of honey? Because if you have like Tupelo honey or orange blossom or buckwheat honey, each one's going to have a very specific profile. So
Yeah.
what is your flagship that you do here?
Yeah, so we stick with local wildflower. We know our beekeepers, and we like to use. So I would say 80% of our meads are wildflower honey. We source primarily from 2 apiaries. One is Murphy's Bee Farm, which is actually right over the hill that way, and then the other one is the Beekeeper's Daughter down in Plains.
That's great.
Yeah, no, and they're a pretty big operation. They have hives all over. Her family name is Perry Apiaries, and they have hives all over northeast Pennsylvania. They also take their bees down to Florida to pollinate the citrus groves.
Wow.
So they'll
big.
bring the bees back, and they'll bring orange blossom honey back. So that's one of the few single varietals that we've actually committed to on a regular basis because it's still a local apiary with their bees. So obviously it's not local. We have no orange trees in Pennsylvania.
Right. But I see what you're doing. You're really keeping a very, within the radius of Dunmore and, not going thousands of miles away.
Yeah. We're
cool.
we're certified Pennsylvania preferred winery, which means we source. I think it's like 80% of our stuff is Pennsylvania grown, and I would say our footprint is actually even tighter between Luzerne and Lackawanna County, providing most of that. There's some exceptions. We can't get grapes. Anyone that's growing good, I would say vinifera grapes, they're using them for their own wines, and they're not selling them to me. We can get Niagara. Pennsylvania grown Niagara and Concord grape, which is a fine, and that's one type of wine. Yeah. But I have to source my Malbecs and my Sauvignon Blancs and stuff. Ideally, we get them from New York, but the homebrew store that we work with, he gets huge juice orders, and so whatever's coming in, I'm going to leverage that. So,
totally. Yeah, I've done it myself.
Yeah.
How about a sizer? Do you? And I'm going to just describe what a sizer is, and folks who listen regularly to Cider Chat probably know what I mean already. But it's where, at least as I see it, you have the fresh pressed apple juice, and you're fermenting with a small amount of honey. Mm-hmm. So if I was doing like a 5-gallon batch, I might do something within 3 up to 5 pounds of honey. That's what I would look at.
Okay, so this is good. Our first product we made, batch 1, was a sizer to blend the Mead and the Cider Works.
That so makes sense.
The first one we did was that, and it was a fresh press of. It was the end of the season press from our cider mill up the road here.
Yeah. Let's give them a shout out. What's the cider mill?
So it's Ritter's Cider Mill.
Ritter's Cider Mill.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they're brilliant. Cool. Every year now I have a tradition of getting his last press of the season, putting it into tanks and making, and our sizer is called Gravity. And then we'll also put barrel age and make a version called Dark Gravity. But that's always, we go up, Merry Christmas, here's my jugs, and then we get them in the tanks. And so we'll dilute, instead of using water and honey, we'll dilute it with apple juice, or that fresh apple cider. And I think we're doing actually, give me a second, I'm going to get my note.
Yeah, take your time.
And get you the starting gravity, and then we can infer how many pounds. So this is, gravity is...
This is for
the sizer.
The sizer gravity.
This is
the dark one.
Yeah. So our starting gravity is around 1095. So I think that equates to 3 or 4 pounds of honey per gallon of. Actually, it's probably less. I take it back. So we got about 40 gravity points coming from the apples, and then we just have to make up the other 60, which is probably about 2 or 2.5 pounds per gallon.
Yeah, that's a little bit higher than I make it with. Are you? What's the yeast that you use with something like that?
That one we're using 71B on that one.
71B.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll switch back and forth between D47 and 71B for those what I would call the wine-like meads and ciders.
Okay. Huh. Interesting.
But we also play with beer yeast. In fact, our best
when you're making a cider.
Well, not cider, but other wines.
Yeah, right.
But no, for ciders, we kind of like the wine aspect. So we'll pick up, white wine, pretty much any white wine yeast that accentuates fruit. We'll make those flavors pull up.
So that the 71B it's so popular, but it dries it out a bit.
Yeah. So do we have enough? So the honey, and it's a dry wine, no doubt. It was meant to be a dry wine.
Right.
This is engineered to be a replacement for a dry white table wine because, again, I'm looking at. So these things are bridges between the beer and the wine world, mead and cider, and we want to convince, I would say, the wine snobs that we can make a sophisticated beverage without a grape. And that was what that was designed to do.
I see. Okay.
So, and we have people, I don't like mead, I've had mead, and I've had ciders. And it's like,
people's minds.
You could put gravity on your dinner table. It will pair with most cheeses. It will pair beautifully with pork and chicken and fish dishes. Anywhere you'd have a white table wine that you don't mind, just a hint of oaking, not enough that become like an overly oak Chardonnay.
Well, was that the dark gravity, or is that the gravity? Both the gravity is. So the dark gravity is, I thought...
Rye whiskey barrel aged.
Oh, rye whiskey, thank you.
No, that's all right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we wanted a little bit of oaking in gravity straight for structure and mouthfeel.
Got it.
It adds... You finish it and you want the next glass.
I've had that myself. Not yours, but with a sizer. Because I've never tried those yeasts with my sizer. I just always stick to the sweet mead. And so I put it in a barrel. I won a first prize years ago on that one, and I put it in a fresh barrel for a while, and it also did like a pet nut. It came out fantastic.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I haven't done pet nut yet.
But the sweet mead yeast leaves some residual, but it's not sweetness, but not over the top. So it's the one thing I always bring as a gateway to the folks coming into the cider world to taste. And, everybody kind of likes it. But it's not I don't drink a lot of it.
It's a good gateway.
It's cool that you're using those yeasts. I'm going to try that and just see that.
Well, we're making wine, right? Yeah. So we leverage the wine. And what does that particular yeast accentuate? If it's saying, I'm going to make fruit pop, then, it could be any fruit
that it's going
to pull out. Yeah.
No doubt. So you have the gravity. That's your sizer.
Yep.
And are you adding fruit to any of these any of the gravity, or do you?
No. The gravity is just the apple cider diluting the honey, and then that's it. We let it ferment it dry,
right?
And then we'll split a batch. And I'm trying to think, do we do another variant? Oh, we do another variant called Chaotic Evil. We put a little bit of chipotle pepper into it.
Right, I saw that.
Yeah, just enough for some heat. Right. So I was trying to think. I knew there was.
I've seen your names. It's just crazy good.
Oh, the Dungeons and Dragons. Love all the chaotic good and chaotic evil.
Yeah, that's great.
So they're still waiting to figure out what lawful evil is going to be, and I'm like, we just have to get the Carolina Reaper, I guess, or something. Put that in weaponized wine at that point.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you play Dungeons and Dragons?
I used to. In fact, I miss it. Friends of mine. Everyone. Family and kids and that kind of
group
way.
Activity, yeah.
And younger kids will come in and they're talking about their games, and I'm like, I'm so jealous. You want to let an old guy play with them? I'm like, nah, that's too creepy. Never mind.
Well, of course, you know. So let's talk a little bit about your ciders. And I'm thinking that it's most of your product, except I see a cork and cage.
Yeah.
Is it primarily still?
Yeah. We do have. I would say we have lightly carbonated.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. I'm just looking at it here because actually we have so much product. I had to move the ciders to the table, and then we also have some in the 750s wine bottles over there too. again, it depends how we're trying to market the product, and also cost and form factors. We're still playing the bottles. There's aluminum bottles right here.
These are super cool, these aluminum bottles.
We stole the idea from Elemental Orchards or Elemental Meadery or Cidery, and we asked them where their supplier was, because we wanted bottle or cans, but if you don't carbonate it, there's no structure to them. So these are solid. These will stand. So we don't have to carve any of these things. They're solid wine. They're aluminum wine bottles, in fact.
Aluminum wine bottles. So they're recyclable. Are you expecting people to bring this back, type of thing, or
no?
Take it to go.
These
are trippy looking. I mean, and it so works with your. I want to describe this to the folks out there in Ciderville. So the bottle itself, this is probably like a 12-ounce bottle here.
That is, that's a 12.
12 ounce.
Yep.
So it's
12.
Shiny aluminum, but not like a can. It's more like a brushed aluminum. I thought it was like something that could be like turned into a water bottle. I probably would. It's such a cool looking bottle. It has a little crown cap on it, and the label, of course. It's lightweight, but it's special. It's like put it in the stocking. Like, what a great, cool
friendly,
novelty.
Beach friendly, concert friendly, places where you can't have glass. Because we did actually do stuff in a PET, plastic bottle, and it just tore our heart out to do it. It just the plastics issue in that. So we were looking for these prior, and the commitment that we'd had to get a truckload. And you've seen our place. There's no room for a truckload of anything here. So we were able to get we could get a pallet of these, and then again, my friends at Honey Hole Winery are kind enough to allow us to use them for storage. I can't say enough about Pete Aiello and the Honey Hole and Simply Homebrew family. I would not be able to do what I'm doing if it wasn't support of those folk to enable me
that's what it's all about.
Access the glass and ingredients in a way that we just wouldn't be able to fit. I'd have to rent another room or something along that line. Yeah, so this format works great. Chill it down. You hand it out at the first Friday art thing or whatever, and you're not worried about glass breaking, and it chills pretty easily. And we ideally want people to if you can make decorations out of these, fantastic. Worst case, recycle it.
And you have both options. It's such a novel presentation. It really pops on the shelf, because I've seen this before on your feed, and it's like, is that really like a water bottle? It's kind of like towels. And now seeing it's like, it's filled with liquid.
It's filled with fine cider. Yeah, we do have a couple meads in them too. There is some experimentation, because really they're not really rated above 8% alcohol. And the concern is it penetrates the lining, and then it hits the aluminum, and then it could with sulfided product produces that wonderful. We haven't. I've done some tests in other cans. Haven't found it to be an issue yet. So, and these are meant to be sold relatively quickly too. So I think the risk for us is low.
So let's talk about some of these things here. Actually, the one I grabbed says Earthbound Pear, a pear cider, 6.9% alcohol by volume.
And that's pears from our buddy Ken Ayers over in Newton Township. All we do is we get the fresh press of stuff, and we put it into a tank, and we might have used SO5 in that one, if I'm thinking right. Sometimes we'll use beer yeast, because we want to try not to dry it out too much and see if that will allow for some residual sugar. I couldn't tell you the variety of pear. I know.
I was wondering.
Yeah. So that's why I was looking through on my notes, and all I know is they're not cider. They're sold for culinary pears. That's an impressive.
I've had some great culinary pear ferments that it's all comes down to the skill of the maker, what you do with the fruit, right?
Yeah.
Just on my way here talking to Elizabeth Ryan, she made a cider out of Cortland apples. And it was just outstanding, So we're changing the paradigm here in our country, right? On what we have in our culinary apples, and always reminds me of Jerome Dupont and Domaine Dupont. He says, stop looking beyond, see what you have there, and work with it, because who knows what we're going to discover.
And that's where
it's beautiful.
I want to play a little bit by doing what I'll call a single varietal ciders just to see what the differences are and play with them. But right now, I just like going up the ritters and say, "What do you have?" Press it and get it, and we're gonna
see what you could do.
Yeah.
So we have the pear cider. What else do we have?
So we have a pear cider. We have something called Independence Day, which is a blend. So last year, our hopes were we're going to sell a lot of ciders. So 2019 fall, I bought a lot of fresh pressed juice and started filling the tanks. And, of course, we were interrupted. We were all put on pause. So I had all these ciders around, and so I actually ended up blending them all together in one tank. And it came. So this is a blend of Ken Ayers cider, Pecora's down the line cider, and Ritter's cider all blended together. And I think it makes for a nice drink. They're definitely on the drier side. We always have to tell people when they're coming in, what kind, what's your favorite sort of cider, and as soon as they name X brand that's on draft at our local bar, I'm like, this is dry. Let's be ready, And so there's some folk that this is too dry for. Other folk, particularly the more people that like wines, are like, oh my gosh, this is cider? Yeah, this is cider, not carbonated still. I almost want to stop using the word cider and start just saying apple wine.
You want to say apple wine?
I want to say apple wine.
Say more.
Simply because I think cider, people have it in its bucket. It has, it's their carbonated, fizzy stuff that I can maybe have one or two glasses at my bar, and it's sweet, and I don't want things sweet. So it has baggage, and so I describe our stuff, and I want to do it more as apple wine. Honey wine, apple wine, grape wine. Let's even sometimes not even saying mead, because that has that baggage of either, like I said, the two stereotypes. This is something I was talking about. Actually, I think it was a posting I did on Instagram. I was actually drinking one of our ciders in a proper wine glass.
I think I saw that.
And I'm like, this is a sophisticated beverage. This is a beautiful beverage that pairs with some very expensive cheese I'm eating tonight. Why are we just dissing this? And this, it's...
I don't know who's dissing it.
Yeah.
But in my experience, cider has always been a very sophisticated drink.
Okay.
And it's just a lot of Americans are kind of catching up to that. So that's really where that's kind of that's where I see cider now in 2021, and it's different than wine. It's not it's not really at that same alcohol level that you see most wines.
True.
So that's
true.
And that's where it does have that little niche where you could deliver it, and you're like you 6.4% here on your Independence Day, which has the coolest label ever. It's your logo, like the astronaut, and I'm going to say Pomona or something like that, pouring some honey and whatnot into a vat, and then over them is this flying saucer and a beam of light on them. It's on that like Independence Day movie theme in a way.
Basically
but
ripped off from that.
It's really a pretty. It's a cool label, but it's a pretty label. I mean, it's a nice looking label.
I'm glad you like that, because that was one of mine that I photoshopped.
You did?
And I don't.
Man, you hit it.
Yeah, because when we hit
it.
I think the cooler one is like.
Oh, this Island Earth. Okay, this is with. It kind of looks like an apple head and I'm going to say a peach head.
Yeah, you got it.
Carbonated blend of apples and peaches. I didn't even see that.
Yeah. So, and that one is this one is 9.3%.
This is a little bit stronger. That would be kind of like an imperial cider.
So we played off the whole sci-fi. But to your point, I get it. Our market.
You play into your market,
but in terms of the perception of cider versus the wine aspect. So, everywhere except the United States, cider is respected. And I don't think we quite have it respected here yet.
Yeah. Well, I guess it really depends on what neighborhood you're in, right? And that's, being in like the Hudson Valley yesterday, I mean, I feel the respect there. Or the Pacific Northwest, you feel the respect there. Like, people know what cider is, and they know when you're in like Willamette Valley of Oregon, they know what a Pinot Grigio is versus a cider.
True.
They really do.
True.
Or New England.
True.
You know that wine is wine, and cider, New England,
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
And Virginia, and I could keep going on.
No,
and on.
but your point.
Or California.
Yeah.
Like Sonoma County, ripping up the apple trees and planting to do the grapes. It's we're at a moment in time where the field has totally changed, and we're able to create this narrative and set up a niche. And the cool thing about cider is I could drink two of your Earthbound pear at 6.9%, and I would still be below the ABV of a glass of wine.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And sometimes you want one or the other.
Yeah.
But
That's fair.
That's fair. It's unique in that way.
No, and I appreciate the perspective.
Yeah.
I definitely
it's hard. I mean, you're right. It's hard to explain the vocabulary of something that is brand new and yet as old as time for our country, the U.S. And I wouldn't say that cider's really respected everywhere around the world. Everybody is really kind of fighting the same fight.
Oh, really?
Or maybe I should say dancing the same dance.
I like that.
A little bit better.
I like that one, yeah.
And trying to inform people. But it's a problem, but it's a good problem to have, because unlike wine is so registered now of what it is. And so for a creative person like yourself, this just blows it out of the water of the possibilities that you could do. And it's new, it's big, and if you drink, beer, as you did craft beer, you see how now it's always new.
Yeah.
Crazy, because the modern, drinker wants to have something new and exciting and healthy.
Yes, yeah. So
and a nice low ABV is, to me, that's a healthy drink.
Yeah, and that's where we make a lot of what I call traditional wine strength products. It's the majority of our stuff, and that's where the ciders definitely help us. And we're looking at, do we want to make some lower alcohol meads? Not chasing the seltzer market. That one is this kind of there's fads too. I always think Northeast IPA, the juicy stuff is a fad.
Yeah.
I hope, I was just listening to one of your podcasts, I forget, 80-something, Eve Cidery, great piece that was done, talking about dry cider and drier wines, hitting that. And I think that's coming. I think as we're seeing people concerned about calories and not a lot of additives and all this other kind of stuff, I think we're close to that.
Yeah, definitely. I feel that momentum, certainly from my vantage point, very strongly, that people are getting it. But it's different when you're running a business versus a podcast.
Oh, sweet sells, no doubt. Sweet sells. Sweet pays the bills.
Yeah. Anyways, so let's keep on talking about what you have here.
Yeah. Okay. The second thing we actually made was an apple wine, Earthbound Apple.
Earthbound Apple. We have Earthbound Pear, Earthbound Apple.
Earthbound Apple. And so that was the actual second product we made, and that was made the same press of apples. We split it off. So and that's that was also engineered to be a replacement for a dry white table wine, lightly oaked, but this apples, and then we boosted the alcohol with some sugar.
Okay.
Not to sweeten it, but to bring up the alcohol to be considered wine strength.
So what ABV did you bring that up to?
That one is, I'm going to say 11, but it's always helped to look instead of guess. And that is, it is 11, yep.
11%.
Yeah, 11%. Yeah. Not over the top, but something more considered to be wine strength.
Right, definitely, yeah.
Again, showing pressed apples could be just as sophisticated as the grape.
Cool.
The other one that's interesting is we have something called Blue Apple. So when people think of a blueberry cider, they think, again, it's going to be sweet. Again, we took a fresh press of the cider, and we added whole New Jersey blueberries into the tank with them, let them co-ferment, pulled the fruit out, and then pressed it, making sure we got all that wonderfulness back into it, and fermented fairly dry. And that's 6.8% because both blueberries and the apples don't have a lot, but it's a dry cider.
Yeah.
It's a dry, nice,
and that is different for people. They expect a blueberry wine to be really sweet, and it could be both.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And with actual blueberries, a lot of times folk will have, and I will say in Pennsylvania anyway, a lot of the fruit wines tend to be, it's dry wines back sweetened and then adding the flavorings. Kind of nothing wrong with that. They're nice in that. But that blueberry flavor is different from an actual blueberry kind of flavor. So these are nice. These are tart. Again, to me, I make most of the stuff that drink for cheeses. I'm a cheese monger, cheese hound.
Cool.
I just love it. So it's like it's got to stand up, cleanse the palate, so I could get that next bite.
Where are you getting your cheeses around here? Because these look like you have some like little high-end cheeses.
Yeah, we have a lot of good cheese makers in the area, but they're available everywhere. Calkins Creamery and everything along that line. So we were looking for something unique, but Pennsylvania made. And so this is Good Essa. They're out of Howard, Pennsylvania, which is close to State College. They work with Amish farmers, and it's almost like a cooperative where they'll take all those dairy and then make cheeses. And so they're good cheeses. I've seen Moonlight Meadery, which is one of the signature meaderies.
Is, yeah.
He's starting to sell those now too, with them paired with his mead.
Cool.
So
yeah, that just makes it explode. I think that's where what I love about cider. When you blend it and pair it with food, it just is the apple. It's just so incredible that way.
Yeah,
it brings you on another. I'm trying to think of a good space-time metaphor, but a different planet.
Another dimension.
Another dimension. There you go. Yeah, you got it. You're in the rhythm. It's true, though.
Yeah.
It really does. Like, it could be a cheese, and then you launched into that next dimension.
Yeah, in fact, tonight I'm thinking I've found some pork chops, and I know it's cider that's just going to go beautifully with that.
Right.
And we'll cook the pork chops with a couple slices of apples with it too, and just plays all well together.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic beverage for
no doubt.
If you're an eater, it's a fantastic beverage.
Right on.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other ones that we should talk about?
Yeah, I was trying to think what else. Well, we talked a little bit about Dark Gravity, and that's still that one. So Pennsylvania Rye Whiskey. I mean, one of the first times that the United States used troops against their own citizens because of a whiskey rebellion. So we have a good Rye Whiskey reputation, and Dad's Hat is a good one. So we're able to get some fresh barrels from those guys, and then we put our cider into them. So when we were trying to convince some whiskey drinkers how cool cider could be, it's an easy sell. It's an easy sell. You get the apple notes. You definitely get some of the honey character, and then also that rye whiskey character coming through. So that's a favorite, and that's the same alcohol. It's 13.7%. So those are a little more boozier. Well, those are I consider fire pit wines or sippers or something along that line. You're sitting at the end.
Are you saying the Dark Gravity?
Dark Gravity.
The Dark Gravity is 13%.
13.7.
13.7.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the same as Gravity. Gravity was 13.7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, those are significant wine strength.
They certainly are, and but you know what I like what you're doing is you're like you are at the bridge and showing how to walk over it in all these different directions, and your enthusiasm is just absolutely contagious, and you're really scaling up these different commodities in a way that people haven't thought anymore in an interesting area that wouldn't really have this opportunity to delve into wine and cider and mead, and I'm really impressed, Dan. It's cool what you're doing.
I really appreciate that. I'm glad you recognize it because I actually drew a little drawing that shows the wine, beer, mead, cider world, all these things interconnecting, and how do we bridge and allow folks to experience these different things? Yeah, well, actually, and distilled, you're doing it all, and that's not easy to. I mean, it's easy to do in one way because you think, okay, it's the same process, but sometimes people really do kind of, just do one niche part of it. And that you're able to kind of span that whole length of the bridge is really commendable. Well, I appreciate that. I mean, that means a lot. We're lucky. I'm not depending upon feeding a family with this, so it allows me some freedom to play and take some risk. I'm not worried about trying to make next quarter's rent. We're good. We're all right. We're going to be all right for a while, so we can play and then have some fun doing that investment and trying to say, all right, share this with folk. And build that right now. Right,
yeah. Well, this is awesome. I love it. I want to take a little walk back and take a peek at your back room there.
Definitely.
Maybe we could try a little bit of your product.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh yeah.
All right. Well, let's do that.
Awesome.
And so we did. From there, Dan and I took a little tour of the back room where he does all the fermenting. We tasted a lot of his product, along with nibbling on the delicious cheeses he has in stock right there. He also sells some select beers to go to. I mean, everything, he's got it going on in this like really cool setup, very streamlined. It might feel small, but there's so much in there. It's like a bounty of goodness, including he himself. He's worth meeting. I really want to say that. Right now, you got to check out the website. You go to Spacetime Mead Cider Works online, and you could order his products, everything from the mead, the wine, and the cider, and some of the swag too. And it shows you also the cheeses that are available. And there's a lot. I mean, what this guy's doing it's cool. It's really cool. He keeps it going, and he's organized, and he's living his bliss. And what an amazing story. So again, big tip of the hat to Dan. And I'd also like to thank him because he is part of the Cider Going Up campaign for Cider Chat, which is set up for commercial folks, people who are in the trade, who could maybe give a little bit more to Cider Chat so I could keep producing this here podcast. So if that interests you, like Dan, you want to help support the podcast, you could come in at the Cider Going Up campaign page on ciderchat.com, and you'll see a link of all the different cideries and folks who are helping out there. Or you can just become someone who wants to donate to Cider Chat. You'll find that all the buttons and more at ciderchat.com, along with the show notes for this here episode 288 with Dan Schreffler of Spacetime Mead and Cider Works. We got it going on, Ciderville. We are counting up to episode 300. So I hope that enthuses you and that you do consider leaving a little tip for this here podcaster. Check out that donate button at ciderchat.com. And a little shout out to Emily from New York who must have just hit that donate button. Thank you really from the bottom of my heart, Emily, for donating. It really, really helps. Thank you. Hope to meet you someday and raise a glass. So with that, I'm going to leave you here. This is Rhea Windcaller signing off for now. Looking forward to seeing you in Ciderville.
We like cider. We like ponds. We love orchards and having fun. There is a reason. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. We like cider. We like ponds. We like orchards, having some fun. There is a reason. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. Oh yeah. We like cider. Oh yes, we do. We like ponds. Oh yes, we do. We love orchards, having some fun. There is a reason. There is a reason why we do it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. There is a reason why we do it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. Ba-da-da-dum. We like walking down the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. Oh yeah. We like cider. Ba-da-da-dum. We like ponds. Oh yes, we do. We like orchards, having some fun. Yeehaw!